Welcome everyone to the BSV Quarterly Townhall Q1 review for 2024. I'm your host, Manifestable, Brett Banfi, and I'm excited to be here to present to you the most recent developments for Q1 for the BSV Association. With that being said, before we begin, I would like to present a prepared statement on some recent activity that goes a little bit outside of technical development, but is important nevertheless to address. So this is my prepared statement regarding the BSV Association and stewardship. Stewardship narrative is being led by Connor Murray as our project lead. The BSV Association is a Swiss-based nonprofit organization guided by its membership body, taking inspiration from the spirit of the Linux and the Blockchain Foundation. Its mission is to engage governments and businesses around the world in open dialogues regarding the benefits of the BSV blockchain and provide information for pro-blockchain legislation. By realizing the promise of the original Bitcoin white paper, the association provides an open, neutral, and trusted space for businesses and governments to develop, manage, and scale open source applications and ecosystems. We aim to democratize and scale adoption by accelerating the growth of the BSV blockchain and removing technical barriers. This includes support for developers, business operations, training and certifications, marketing and events, and membership development to help projects scale fast. Our team includes experts in technology management, business, legal, community, and developer marketing, and ecosystem development, all focused on blockchain technology. We are passionate about software, hardware, and standards development that unlocks the power of blockchain technology to drive shared innovation. Stewards of the protocol. The BSV Association was initially formed to counteract the repeated occurrences where developer groups altered the original protocol as set out in the Bitcoin white paper. Since its inception in 2018, the BSV Association has acted as a steward of the BSV blockchain, ensuring it remains set in stone and realizing Satoshi's vision of massive scalability as set out in the white paper. This includes the development of software and infrastructure tooling, facilitating the usage of standards across wallets and applications in the ecosystem, and promoting the BSV blockchain through educational content and community events around the world. As its steward, the BSV Association is committed to preserving the restored original Bitcoin protocol and enabling global adoption of the BSV blockchain by continuing to improve the scalability of BSV. Regarding Dr. Wright, Dr. Wright has championed the need for massive scalability of BSV and for the Bitcoin protocol to be restored to Satoshi's original design and to be made set in stone, ensuring that the protocol cannot be altered by any single individual or entity. Dr. Wright's extensive knowledge on the Bitcoin protocol and blockchain scalability has helped the BSV Association to preserve Satoshi's original protocol and create scalable node software to enable BSV to be used globally. We remain aligned with this fundamental vision. And with that being said, I want to thank you all for being here. I have our Managing Director, Cyril Albrecht, coming up next, and Cyril will be walking us through the roadmap for 2024 and going forward.
Thank you, Brett. Please go to the next slide. So before we deep dive into all the products, value stream, and activities, can you move one slide forward, please? I would like to start to set the scene with this high-level roadmap for the next 3 years. Let me start from the bottom and going up to the top. So on the bottom, stewardship, obviously an important core element. Then we have all kind of Teranode activities. And then we have this yellow box. These are all SV node activities, our SPV wallet, and also the SV node itself, standardization of libraries. There are quite a few also still ongoing activities for the SV node. Then again, moving to the blue boxes on the top, building unit, SP wallet, ARC, Merkle services. These are all new building units which only will work on Teranode. And finally, for the whole network shift, which is planned over the next few months, obviously we also need to talk about transaction processor, node operator network, the overlay network, the application network. And when I say we need to talk, then I mean education, I mean events, marketing, outreach activities, knowledge sharing session, etc., etc. We need to go out to share information and obviously also receiving feedback from the community, working together closely. We can only be successful if we work as a team, which is where we would like to achieve a successful ecosystem. And finally, also, obviously, we will also try to standardize at least some basic elements on different layers, and we will also offer in the future a certification program. As you can see, we will have a transition phase, a dual run. Dual run means SV node and Teranode running on the same mainnet. How that will be, that depends a little bit on a few parameters. How quick Teranode will run, how quick people will will be ready for the network shift, and a few more things. So that's why the education and the knowledge sharing session again on the top are so important. So we will see when the transition phase will end, when we start to do the phase out of the SV node. So that's definitely depending a little bit on a few more parameters and also on the feedback from the ecosystem. So this is a little bit the idea. I wanted to give you the big picture for the next 3 coming years, also showing the challenges, the dependencies, and now I'm happy to go deeper in more business relevant activities, and I hand over to my next colleague.
All right, thank you so much, Cyril. Next up, we have a guest presentation from David Case. David, are you there?
Yep. Can you hear me?
All right. Yeah, we can hear you, David. Thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, we'll let you take the floor.
All right. Well, so this is essentially kind of the an overview of what's gone on in kind of the external dev community through my eyes. Much of this stuff that I'm going to talk about are things that I have been involved in one light or another, and it by no means encapsulate everything that's happening in the community. So next slide. So to start things off, I'm going to kind of cover the last year, and it went back to just about a year ago when Ordinals were released on BTC. So an Ordinal, for anyone who doesn't know, it's a color coin mechanism. It came out on BTC in January or February of last year. February is when it really started going, so that's the date I put. It's basically just a mechanism of accounting for single Satoshis as they spend from one transaction to another. And so it's basically an NFT mechanism where individual Satoshis are treated as an NFT. And then as kind of the first implementation of this that took off on BTC, there's this concept of an inscription, which basically means you isolate a Satoshi as an NFT, and then you record data on the chain against that Satoshi. And so this is largely used at this point for collectible NFTs, art collections, that kind of stuff. Ordinals as a technology or as a concept has taken off across all UTXO blockchains. It's very active on Doge, it's very active on Litecoin, and of course BTC itself. So because, as opposed to like other token mechanisms that have been established at this point, because an ordinal just exists on a single Satoshi, and it's really about moving that Satoshi across different transactions, those Satoshis can be locked up in Bitcoin script, just like any other UTXO output can. And so that allows for far more programmability of ordinals than, say, my vocabulary is lacking me right now. Stas token, that's where I was going. Where Stas token is kind of all about the script is always the same, and as tokens move from person to person, the script is never different. Well, using an ordinal type approach where the Satoshi itself is your token, you can lock up that token in that Satoshi in any script you need. Next slide. So when this took off in BTC, literally within weeks of that happening, Luke Rohenes approached me and is like, "Hey, Run is dead. We need a token, an NFT standard on BSV." And so we kind of immediately took the insight that the BTC chain had this concept that has taken off on BTC, and we implemented one-sat ordinals on BSV. So essentially, one-sat ordinals is just a direct implementation of the BTC standard, but with some differences from the kind of different rules within the chain require. One of the limitations we put on these ordinals is that they always exist in a one Satoshi output. On BTC, they don't support one Satoshi outputs because there are dust limits. And so they have to do some complicated thing where the accounting is based on the first Satoshi where an inscription happened. And anyways, it gets very complicated. So we basically, for our solution, ripped out that and just kind of said these only exist on one Satoshi outputs. We released that. We built onesatordinals.com, which is kind of a proof of concept website that allows users to create inscriptions on ordinals and to transfer them and just basic behavior. And this was kind of put out as a proof of concept such that anyone else could figure out how to interact with these things. We also released, I also released a open source indexer, which will allow ingestion of transactions and parse what kind of ordinal transfers have happened and kind of track the ordinals across different transactions within the view of that indexer. Got a link there to alpha.onesatordinals.com. That is a kind of our new, basically the old site was out there for a year. We've now re-envisioned it, and that is out there. Anyone can check it out. And to this date, there have been over 2.7 billion ordinals inscribed on the BSV chain. Next slide. So another thing which actually was developed concurrently on the BTC chain and we started doing on BSV is the concept of recursive inscriptions. So an inscription itself is just a file on chain, and those files can be things like HTML files that have links to images or links to other files or other pages, or can be JavaScript. And so this concept of recursive inscription is basically taking the idea of a link and kind of writing it in a standard way. There's a certain relative path that you put in your HTML page or in your SVG image, and when it's pointing to something else, it'll always be done in a certain way, and any server that's serving that page up or any Web3 wallet that understands that knows how to parse and how to figure out links to other inscriptions. So one of the tools that I built early on is this system called OrdFS, which is kind of two-part. One is it creates the concept of how do you inscribe a directory of files on the chain? And secondarily, there's a server aspect that basically helps helps in serving up these resources from a web server that understands what how the whole inscription system and process works. Along with that, with the OrdFS server, is ability to tie in your web server and some registrations within DNS such that you can serve up an ordinal as your homepage. Such that, so at one point when testing this out, I set up ordinals.sugar.cloud, which I don't think is live anymore, but that was my own domain. It pointed to a web server that was running this OrdFS server. And then in my DNS, I actually was able to register, this is the ordinal that should be served up as the homepage whenever you hit that URL. So at the network level, you're making a request to DNS, it's pointing you to this web server. That web server gets a request, sees that it comes from a domain it knows about, looks up in that domain and figures out, okay, what is the inscription that I should be serving up as the homepage for this website? So essentially, it lets you have your website inscribed on chain, and regular Web 2 technologies can serve it up as your website. Again, there's a site, ordfs.network, that's out there that kind of helps people kind of inscribe these recursive inscriptions and preview what they look like before you put it on chain and stuff. Next slide. Okay, so Ordinal Lock is a script smart contract, which was built inspired by something that RelayX had built for the Run ecosystem. Ordinal Lock is an script contract that essentially allows you to sell your ordinals. And it allows you, it does that in such a way such that your UTXO is locked with two spending conditions allowed in the contract. One spending condition is the person who listed it can cancel it, which essentially just means moving it back to whatever other ownership, whatever level of locking script they want, or any user can purchase the inscription by simply, it's a covenant type contract, meaning that anyone can spend it as long as they're spending it in a transaction that includes a payment output as defined by the seller. So I might list an ordinal I've got, maybe I've got a cute little, I don't know, frog collectible, whatever. I can lock it up in an ordinal lock saying anyone who pays my address 1 BSV can spend this, can have this ordinal essentially, can take control of the ordinal and lock it up in however they want to lock it up.
Thank you, David. I want to give you just a 5-minute time check for this.
Oh, wow. Okay. Good. You can, so yeah, we can go on to the next slide then. All right. OpNS is another contract fairly similar to many others we're going to talk about here, which is a DNS system, allows people to submit proof of work to claim a globally unique name. And the state of that is maintained on chain in the contracts. We can skip the next. This is kind of getting to, oh, okay, we've got a couple more. Locks is something that kind of took off this summer. The basic idea here is that you can provably show that you have taken your BSV out of commission for a while. Essentially, it's a contract that does nothing more than makes it such that your Bitcoin locked in it can't be spent anymore until a certain block height is proved. So this has got a couple different applications, but mostly right now it's being used as kind of a costly signal upvote system on hodlocker.com. It's also used as kind of a gatekeeping mechanism. There's a fairly active Telegram community called Top 100 Lockers, and literally you have to prove that you are one of the top 100 people who has locked coins in order to get into that community. This has taken off as there's a lot of interesting ideas around this, but I guess with timing, let's move on. Actually, I'll summarize the next couple slides kind of all together. So BSV 20 started off as a very ill-fated attempt to mimic something that BTC is doing. They had this BRC 20. It's basically a public mint token, which essentially means as soon as someone defines that this token exists on chain, anyone can just write data on chain. And if they're one of the people who got in before the supply is gone, they get granted the token. This approach, this public mint, is kind of neat, but it's very, very hard to index, which has led to the development of the next slide. So BSV 20 V2, which is now calling BSV 21, is essentially an extension to BSV 20 that drops the concept of public mint and basically works far more like an Ethereum fungible token contract. So when you define a token, it exists, but with it exists the entire supply of that token. And what's powerful, sorry, I'm kind of flying through this fast, so I'm not sure if I'm getting any details, but next slide. What's really, really cool about this is BSV 21 tokens can be deployed such that they are locked in an S-Crypt contract. So this allows essentially smart contracts to control the distribution of fungible tokens. So two examples of that have kind of taken off in the last several months are lock to mint, which basically contract enforces that you must lock up coins using the lock contract in order to have non-fungible token or fungible tokens distributed to you. And then more recently, just in the last 2 months, POW 20 is kind of the same concept, but it's a proof of work enforced. So S-Crypt contract enforces validation of proof of work. If a person has provided the proof of work, then tokens are issued to that user.
Thank you. And final minute check.
Yep, next slide. Actually, we can skip that one. Next slide. Okay, and then I guess the other thing that's been kind of a big development recently over the last several months is the Yours wallet, which is an open source community developed wallet that it's not going to say at this point it's the peak of security or anything like that, but what it does allow is it allows developers to play with these different ideas of creating S-Crypt contracts and allow users to sign arbitrary contracts as designed by, as whatever the contract needs. So it isn't about Handcash supports this type of interacting with BSV, and so you can only do that kind of stuff within Handcash. It's an external process that essentially the signatures you need to create different S-Crypt contracts and call them can be done by anyone.
Thank you. And I just want to thank you so much for presenting this content for us. David, for those who don't know, is a genius developer, very innovative, very always pushing the boundaries of what this technology makes capable. And I can't thank you enough. One other thing that I want to highlight about David's experience in his past is that he does come from outside blockchains, but it realize their limitations of what they can actually make possible. And so it's only through BSV that these unique functions of the emergence of a Web3 economy and Web3 tooling for developers actually becomes possible and possible at scale. So David is an extremely great example of that. I encourage everyone who wants to ask more questions about the information that David presented to please join us in the Discord, and we will continue that conversation. Next up, we will be presenting Darren Kellenschweller. Darren will be, excuse me, hold on, I'm sorry, one moment. Darren will be presenting on the utilization value stream. Darren, are you there?
I am. Yeah, thanks, Brett. And thanks, David. David's been doing a fantastic job working with us. Also, the center of the screen here, developer tools, the Go SDK, as well as creating those fantastic sort of bleeding edge technologies there in the script world. He's been working with us on the core libraries for the Golang ecosystem. So shout out to him and the rest of the team at Gorilla Pool have been helping us out with that. But looking back at the top here, I'm super excited about the fact that we now have an SPV wallet, something that actually implements simplified payment verification as described in the Bitcoin white paper, perhaps for the first time that an open source project is implementing it all the way back so that it includes all parent transactions back to Merkle paths. So that's very exciting. We launched a sort of private beta group at the script meetup, the San Francisco meetup just recently. So thanks for everyone who's given us feedback so far on that. We're going to incorporate that feedback into the V1 release, which we expect anytime now, basically the very start of April. We're going to give the guys a little bit more time to process that feedback and implement small changes that we just discussed this week. So the first week of April, we expect to launch officially. And that will involve a product that's available on the AWS Marketplace, a one-click install. You can deploy it to your own Kubernetes stack within an AWS distribution. You just need to have a domain name registered on that platform so that it can auto-deploy to all of those things. There's also a developer-focused startup, so you can launch this on the local machine into a sort of local cluster as well for development work. See how it works, get familiar with the kind of new concepts. And there's a whole lot of documentation that explains what we even mean by SPV in the first place and the sort of flavor that we're using here, because a lot of people have a different understanding of what that even means from the various implementations that have been attempted over the last 15 years. So there was a lecture that Jake and I were part of in Japan, at least remotely. We sort of dialed in and made some of that content available. I believe that's available in part online now, so definitely check out that content to dive in the details of the SPV wallet. So the guys Yenpoint Ken Sato that was involved in testing the SPV wallet hosted us there, so that was great. Moving swiftly on to overlays, Arc V1 production officially launched today. So that's stable at 1,000 transactions per second for a single vendor. So thanks for all of our testing partners, includes Handcash, the guys at Gorilla Pool running it, of course, and Tokenized, Tokenovate, a bunch of partners that we worked with in making that experience better from the user perspective. So a proof of concept for a TypeScript overlay has been put together in terms of architecture, reviewed by a steering committee, signed off. We're awaiting signatures there to move ahead on that front, but that's very exciting. Also, developer tools, I mentioned the Golang SDK. The TypeScript SDK has been launched for some time now. We've had 4,000 downloads so far. Examples and documentation have been added to that. So if you saw it when it was originally launched, go back, take a look under docs/examples to see use cases. We're going to be creating some more content in the coming weeks to flesh that out some more and get people more familiar. And a Python SDK is, we're at contracting stage. So we're going to kick off with that imminently. The script hackathon, I think we've heard a lot of success that came out of that. So I just wanted to mention that briefly, but I see my time diminishing, so I'll jump to the secure custody scheme. So we put together a work group to make sure that the BSVA have something that we can stand behind in terms of making the peak security in terms of how to secure large quantities of either BSV or tokens on BSV that represent valuable assets. So that includes Shamir's secret sharing scheme for disaster recovery, as well as incorporating nChain's optimal threshold signature scheme and some multi-party computation, which is sort of de facto industry standard with exchanges for large holdings at corporations. So the next phase of that will be to create a public-facing BRC encapsulating the details there. And that's my time. So I'll pass it back to Brett. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and next up we have Siggy, followed by Connor Mary. Siggy talking on the topic of standardization.
Thank you, Brett. Yeah, a little bit of an update on Teranode and what we're doing there. It's a main focus at the moment. We've had Teranode in a fairly good state now for a couple of months. But we have been dealing over the last couple of months, dealing with lots of network related issues. And what does that mean? We're trying to do the impossible here, to do 1 million transactions a second on a UTXO based blockchain. But I think we've managed, but we're pushing the edges of everything that we're using. So we are running our test with 3 nodes in AWS at the moment, and we're stress testing the AWS network, and we're getting feedback from the guys there as well. We're also using database technologies on the back end, and we've gotten some feedback from those guys that they've never seen these kind of workloads in their history of using it. So we're really pushing the limits of everything that we're doing. And so what we've been doing over the last months is trying to work around these limitations of hardware networking. We have done some infrastructure changes. We have done some architectural changes. So if any of you have seen the original architecture diagram of Teranode, it looks slightly different now. It's a little bit more extended, and we've actually introduced some new systems in there. So we're using Kafka as a queue, for instance, that wasn't necessary before. So at the scales that we are working, things start behaving differently, and this is something that we're continuously fighting against. Give you a little bit of an idea of that. When we're running the 3 nodes at scale, we are generating about 5 terabytes of logs per hour. So if anything goes wrong, we're looking for the needle in the haystack. And we're getting better and better at it. And I think actually we're getting very, very close now. We have been running for a couple of weeks now without problems, in the sense that the Teranode is working. So the software is working properly, but we are having problems in the infrastructure and the configuration. So that's what we're actually working on now. We have running the 3 nodes has been very, very helpful. We have presented before very big numbers, so we can do 2+ million on 1 node. On 2 nodes, we can do very much, but we get into 3 nodes, things start to get a little bit more hairy. So that's where we're kind of running into. And we have found at the 3 node scale, with 3 nodes competing for blocks, and just like any Bitcoin-based blockchain would do, we are finding bugs and we have fixed those, but we haven't seen them in a couple of weeks now. We're mainly trying to tweak the infrastructure, so the settings on the database, the settings on the network, the machine types and things like that, to try to run this at a reasonable cost, because that's also one of the things that we have to do. We can't explode the budget on this. So that's what we're currently doing. I want to show you a little bit of a graph to make it a little bit more visible what it looks like. That graph that is going a little bit up and down there, we are hitting 1.1 million transactions a second fairly easily now in all our tests. We can ramp that up in a couple of minutes without problems. That was an impossible task 9 months ago. Now we're doing it very, very easily. But we have all these dips in our graph. So this is one of the things that we're working on configuring and tweaking. These dips that you're seeing is actually blocks being mined. So a node finds the blocks, shares it around the network, and gets very, very busy on everything trying to mine those blocks. So it's looking very good, but it's that last tiny little needles in the haystack that we're looking for, that I'm confident we'll be finding in the next couple of weeks, so we can start up a long running test. We started a little bit earlier, about a month ago, being public about our testing, but we decided to do that because there's a massive amounts of cost involved in these 3 node tests, and we wanted to be open about it, show people that, you know, what we're doing. Wanted to fail publicly, which we're doing very often. A lot of the restarts that happen. So if you're looking at the our portal on the web, you see oftentimes that things go back to the counters get reset. That is us resetting it, changing configurations, trying to figure it out. So please expect that for the next couple of weeks as well. And that's all by design. We just wanted to be a little bit more open in what we're doing to show the world that, you know, we are getting there. We're getting closer and closer, and we can actually reach these high TPS. The last thing I wanted to share with you, keep an eye on Discord, join our Discord. We are going to be launching a new portal that gives a lot more information about what we're doing in internals, so actually how Teranode works, very, very soon. So please join us there and keep an eye on that. Right on time, right, Brett?
That's correct. Yeah. And those who are looking to join that Discord, it is discord.gg/BSV, and you'll see the Teranode channel there. I invite you to join us. And next up, we have Connor Murray to speak with us on the topic of stewardship. Connor, are you with us?
Yes, thank you. It's always unfair that I have to follow 1 million TPS, but I'll do it again. Okay, so hi everyone. As some of you are probably aware, the last month for us was noteworthy because we went live with two of our, I was about to call them products, but it's not really the right word. The first was the network access rules. So we spent a lot of time working with a really impressive group of legal scholars out of the UK who have a really interesting background. We've published a lot of this stuff, so I won't go over all of it, but I do encourage you to read about the group of lawyers that we worked with to build this, because they have a really interesting history and how they were able to take their history and apply it to what we were looking to do with BSV was really interesting to me. The network access rules are basically our way of codifying the rules and terms of the white paper into a clear legal contract. So the purposes of this was basically twofold. One, to essentially codify what we all know to be true as to what the rules of the network are, right? So taking the Bitcoin white paper itself and putting it into clear terms and conditions of, you know, your job as a miner is to do X, Y, and Z. So these are contractual terms for nodes in the network. And by nodes, we mean miners, of course. And then also to bind the association to certain terms and conditions, right? So really interesting thing that always comes up, if you guys remember Peter Schiff, who was at our last London blockchain conference, he always makes an argument that I've never heard a satisfactory answer against, which is there actually is no hard cap in Bitcoin because any developer could go in and just change the supply, right? And what we've done basically with these network access rules is actually bound the 21 million coin supply, right? So the association or anyone else can never go in and change that, right? So these are the types of bilateral conditions we've set forth in the network. I know I've been participating in a lot of media and outreach about this, so I'm open to answer any other questions you have about these rules. But I encourage everyone to read them if you haven't read them, because they're not as it's not as crazy as it might sound. It's really just trying to take these rules that we already knew to be true and putting them into clear terms and conditions. And I want to add one other piece, that a big reason we want to do that as well is because following on from Siggy, as we get to 1 million TPS, we're not talking about the current small hobby mining operations, mining BSV. We're talking about large, very, very large enterprise customers that will be actually mining on BSV. So having clear terms and conditions makes the decision to invest millions of dollars into the infrastructure that it takes to mine more attractive. Second, the alert system itself was released. So the alert system is designed actually to plug right into Teranode, but we released it to run alongside SV Node. And this allows us to deal with any network attacks, allows us to solve one of the biggest problems that I've had at the association is when we release a new version of the software, how do we tell miners? This is a nice way for us to contact miners directly, you know, unilaterally, right? So one directional. And also include support for digital asset recovery as well. The protocol restoration scope. So I'm helping Frank out from the provisioning stream, just mentioning this. We defined this scope a number of months back. We just haven't had the time to get the development started. We're going to start the development on the remaining bits of the protocol restoration items, which have in the past been referred to as the Chronicle update. That scope is basically finalized. I've shared it with a number of participants in the ecosystem in a couple channels. I'm happy to share that as well. We're going to publish that very shortly. We're just waiting to get a clear timeline on development to publish the scope. But I can just mention them that it's the remaining opcodes, so opver, opver if, opver not if, removing all the last remaining limitations. So for instance, the low S requirement on signatures, all the stuff that was added for transaction malleability purposes is going to be removed. And yeah, I have 30 seconds left. And finally, operating model. So we've also been in development with a large consulting agency on fulfilling an operating model for the association, specifically around the stewardship functions. And that's been a really enlightening process, and we're working on implementing that as well alongside the current operating model we've already developed. So I will stop with 8 seconds to spare. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Connor. Next up, we have Jake Jones speaking to us on the ecosystem. Jake.
Thanks, Brett. And thanks, David, Darren, Siggy, and Connor for your presentations. I wanted to take just a little bit of a bigger picture perspective here, zoom out a little bit, and try and connect all of these different pieces together for everyone. So starting with what the business case for blockchain is, and kind of refocusing on that first. What the competitive advantage of blockchain is, and what BSV is really the only blockchain that's able to provide, is high frequency micropayments. And so that's what all of this infrastructure and all of these projects are driving. So the first step with that was obviously Teranode, which Siggy, Simon, Liam, and team have done a fantastic job with. So hats off to them. And then the next step is overlay services, which Darren and Thomas are heading up, as well as the SPV wallet. And then what those things provide. So following that, the next major steps will be identity. And then obviously AI is a big topic these days, and that includes data provenance, ownership, and privacy. So all of these things are working together to form a nice coherent system. So just stepping through these really quickly. Teranode, what is Teranode actually doing, and what are these tests proving? So the tests prove that these concepts work. It's proving that the thesis of small, high frequency micropayments is valid, and it's something that we can actually do. And then how do we get ready for interacting with it? So Q1 will likely be the alpha launch. Listening node will be later this year, and then the end of the year it'll be mining blocks. So hopefully Q1 will be the launch of the alpha, and then interacting with that will be the next step, and that's going to be via IPv6 and the MNet, which I'll get to in a little bit. But the main difference here is we're shifting from interacting directly with nodes where you're sending something and getting something back, to you're sending something and then you're making a request, or you're sending something, you're subscribing to a group address and you're filtering out information, and then you're making a request from an entity that's closer to you within the network topology. And obviously a big part of that is Merkle trees and the Merkle service. And the Merkle service is actually a good example of that, because it doesn't sit within Teranode itself. It sits outside of Teranode, and it's taking in the same subtree information as Teranode and then deriving Merkle paths from that, which it's then supplying. So it's a little bit convoluted, but hopefully that was a good example. But moving on to overlay services. So thanks again, David, for your presentation once at Ordinals. And I wanted to just highlight that everything that David presented can be done by overlay services. So it's not like we're trying to make a huge shift here where we're destroying any sort of current business model. We're actually providing tools to improve it. So it should become a lot easier via overlay services than having to rely on global indexers or looking at things from a global perspective. And another thing I just wanted to highlight really quickly was the libraries project. So white paper 42, I'm not sure how many people are familiar with it, but it's an N-chain patent that describes a way of creating shared secrets and using the asymmetric keys to create a symmetric key between parties, and then using that symmetric key for communication. And it's really great to see that the team at Babbage who helped with this project have started implementing this stuff. So white paper 42 is now a fundamental part of the new library, and taking that approach is it's going to be really helpful going forward. And then finally, I'm going to skip the SPV wallet stuff because I see I only have 45 seconds left. I wanted to just touch on the MNET and IPv6. So to give you a little bit of a better idea of how this stuff is going to work, the way Teranode will work in future is it's going to be using IPv6 group addresses for communication. So transactions are coming in and they're going to all of the nodes at the same time via IPv6 group addresses. And then those same Teranodes will be subscribed to the same group addresses to communicate subtrees and blocks and any other information they need to communicate to each other. But because of that setup, all of these other overlay services or other supporting services to the nodes can subscribe to those same group addresses. So it's just a little bit of a different way of thinking about things, but I wanted to cover it so that could just plant that seed, and hopefully people will start thinking about things in that way. And I'll hand it back to you, Brett. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And one thing I just want to highlight that I think you made very clear is just the way in which these various different levels of development depend on each other. So some of those, functions of the subscription models and things like this for requesting data, they become truly possible by this development of micropayments, as this is an economic system. Okay, next up we have Nicholas Wellinger. Nicholas, thank you so much. Are you with us?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
We can indeed.
Perfect. Thanks, Brett. Thanks everyone speaking before me. Minute 54. I'm trying to be the espresso shot now, waking you guys up for the rest of the next half an hour session. And I have a very exciting topic, public affairs. Don't worry, I will make it exciting. You might remember in January, I showed you a slide where we successfully, more or less, were able to clone Brian Doherty, that you all know, in various locations, various variations, and also stacked up his team in the US. But some things I don't want to talk about UK and EU now because we're cooking up a lot of things there, but they're not ready to be shared yet. Some things have to be left to the original, and I just want to share something that only the original Brian Doherty can pull off. They had an amazing event yesterday in the US, BSV Demo Day on Capitol Hill. I believe the whole team around him, Sean and Alex, they're traveling back home after a tough day in Washington, DC. So I'm gonna try to make it as juicy and real for you to tell you what happened there. Just some admin facts. It happened yesterday. All of this was sponsored by the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Mike Johnson. For the people that know US politics, they know that this is a name to be reckoned with. The result was that not only our people, but also Cozen, our partner in the US, did a great job in bringing a lot of people together and organize the event in a very efficient way. What does that mean? We had a resounding success. 54 people RSVP'd, 80 people showed up. It's usually the opposite, like your average wedding. But this time we could really, really excite a lot of people. The attendance was in average more than an hour, very interactive. They didn't just come by to get some snacks. They really wanted to understand what's happening here. From basic questions on blockchain to specific questions on the influence on policymaking and on various topics. Everybody was open-minded and nobody really thought or talked about crypto. They were just interested in utility and use cases on blockchain. And to quote Brian here, after 2 years of his hard work and Cozen's work of preparation, we could show that we walk our talk and there are solutions there ready. It is not an idea 10, 15 years away anymore. With that being said, the crowd there understood that utility is possible and closer than they think on blockchain with the solutions that were presented to them. You might ask now, who were the solutions that were presented? They were chosen based on the audience of politicians that RSVP'd and the offices that they worked for. Enchain presented their identity solution. Smart Grow Agrotech presented an IoT and agriculture solution. Smart Ledger presented CertiHash. Tokenovate presented their futures and options platform of the future. An outlook and a learning from this event. It's a big opportunity to influence and build on the demo day momentum, to educate the offices, the representatives of the House, the committee. I'm not so familiar with US politics, but these are all the committees and levels that you have to go through. And it was also requested by them to repeat this on a state level. So huge success and dear ecosystem here. If you haven't presented now, don't be surprised if Brian or the European and UK advisors reach out to you, because we're looking for new use cases for the next demo days. As this was the first time that a functioning blockchain applications were ever presented to the US federal government, they were really grateful and happy and showed the whole bunch at the Capitol Hill. Watch out on social media and you will see some nice snapshots of some smart people for once taking over Capitol Hill out of the BSV blockchain ecosystem. Next topic, public relations. This is a very important topic, and we were searching long for the right partner. We knew that we wanted to work with Lightning Sharks, but Lightning Sharks has finally found the right guy. He's on the call with us today, Paul Fox, as it's just his second week. We didn't want to put him on the presentation today, but you will hear from him in the next quarter. So let's give him the first 100 days to get accustomed, and then you will hear more about what we're cooking up there. And last but not least, public use cases. Well, all I can tell you right now is that those people that were presenting on the US Capitol Hill demo day, they have filled their black books with contacts and leads and have follow-up discussions on proof of concepts and collaboration opportunities. So full success. Thank you for listening in. Back to Brad.
Thank you so much, Nico. Thank you for that presentation. Next up, we have the outreach focused on the private sector. This will be introduced to us by Marcin Zatecki. Marcin, are you with us?
Thank you, Brett. Thank you all. Hello, everyone. So I'm happy to represent Outreach today. Let's start with our first activity, Mobilum partnership. We are nearing an agreement with Mobilum for global BSV on and off-ramp services that cover 50 US states. The platform also will introduce the BSV USD stablecoin, which is also very important for our BSV ecosystem. Also, we had over the 55 meetings with exchanges and on-off-ramp services to discuss BSV listings and finalize the timelines. Also, we have few a few internal and external meetings with Enchain to discuss a roadmap for the BSV developers tools. We talk about the open source and commercial developer tools. Now we can jump to the India Hub, which the Rohan is the leader of the India Hub. And Rohan conducted 3 meetups of Big Blockers community, which is also the BSV community in 3 different cities of Delhi, Mumbai, and Indore, with topics and speakers ranging from government, banks, and the leading enterprise trusts like KPMG. Rohan also gave a keynote at the KPMG office and attended the Bharat FinTech Summit 2024. After these activities, we had almost 100 new people who joined to the Big Blockers community, which is a really nice number. Next, Rohan also conducted blockchain workshop at 2 prestigious universities on their blockchain curriculum creation. First teacher training program, which will be scheduled for 6th of May, and also in inauguration of Blockchain Innovation Lab, focusing on education and practical application. Rohan also developed 3 proof of concept projects like supply chain, financing prototypes, and reputation management system. And one of the outcomes of this activity, this proof of concept, was the collaboration with the Reserve Bank in their sandbox with the one project. Next one, it's Federation of Import Export Organization is moving forward with the pilot project done with Unisot for digital product passports. And the last one in India Hub is Rohan scheduled the BSV Hackathon for the 28th of May with Blockchain Society at the Trist Technical Festival in Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi. Now we can jump to the China, which the leader is Liz. Liz collaborated with Hunan University of Information Technology on blockchain course for 2024 semesters. Also, Liz hosted an event for 80 people and 9 speakers from AI, blockchain, VC companies. The outcome, the result of the event is two potential projects on IP management and monetization. The last one, there is a supercomputing talent training platform, the link you can see on the slides also, which wants to put the user's data and certificates on the blockchain. Lee, as a result, Lee's invited Dot Wallet, which is a BSV wallet, to be involved in the conversation with this project. The last one, we have three topics in Poland. We have established cooperation with the Blockchain and New Technology Student Club at the Poznań University of Technology. Thanks to this cooperation, we will have direct access or direct communication with the developers. Also, we are in talks to join the IT Corner Association, which is the second biggest association collected IT companies in Poland. They brings together the founders of over 100 IT companies in Poland. And thanks to this cooperation, we have direct access not only to the talents, but also to the owner or co-founders of these companies. The last one is Innovators of Tomorrow. As a Polish Blockchain Association, we have launched the Innovators of Tomorrow project, where we teach students from the high school in Poland about the blockchain, IoT, AI technologies, and managing and established startups. The blockchain part was led by Aleksander Góra from BSV Association, and the other companies involved in this project is Intel, PKO Polish Bank, the biggest Polish bank. Tauron is the biggest energy company, and also National Clearing House, and we BSV. So this project will be continued on the Technology of Tomorrow conference this year, which should be the most innovations conference in Central Eastern Europe, and it's also opportunities for us to present not only the BSV blockchain, but the Teranode, and show that we are the unique at the blockchains industry. And I think that's all from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marcin. And next up, we have Evan Freeman speaking to us about education. Evan, are you with us?
Yes. Can you hear and see me, Brett?
We can indeed. Good to see you.
Excellent. Hello, everyone. Good to see you, Brett. Hello, everyone. I hope you're all well. I'm just going to provide a short update today. Due to some of the hostility online our education partners have been experiencing, I'll try to refrain from mentioning their names until things calm down a bit, but be assured that we've been making great progress in our education initiatives. This includes our sport industry Web3 webinar series with Zetli and a prestigious European-based sports business school under the instruction of our content specialist, Kevin Healy. We've also been making great progress with one of our master's programs being taught by our chief of content, Todd Price, in the Philippines. We have additional programs coming up there as well, and we are working towards the launch of our next blockchain innovation program in Africa in the coming month. I'd like it to be known that we have a strong graduate and undergraduate program offerings available to universities for free. And we would really love any assistance from the ecosystem in connecting us with any universities you may have a relationship with that is interested in exploring the potential of hosting our programs. So if any of you are, in contact with universities, maybe working with universities on various projects, please get in touch with me at evan.freeman@bsvblockchain.org or get in touch with Brett even. And let's see what we can do, because we have some great programs, and we really need to spread this content out there so that the future leaders of the world will have the knowledge necessary to make good decisions when it comes to implementing blockchain and particularly BSV. So I won't take any more of your time. Thank you all, and best regards.
Yes, and I really want to highlight that this is an example where community support and outreach is so important. We oftentimes have a really deep, close relationship with the university that is right in our backyard. So this is an area where we can really distribute the load, just like the blockchain is designed to do. And I'm happy to be that assembly person that can send me the information in the Discord of the ways to contact your point of contact at your local university, and I can ensure that that gets fed into Evan. Thank you so much. All right, and then next to speak we have Liz speaking to us from the growth team. Liz, thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone. So what I would like to tell you about is particularly our value stream education that the growth team, along with the education team, have put together over, the last year. So the aim was to put together a comms task force to try and get ahead of the FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So we want to brief you on the work we're doing in and for the BSV ecosystem, but do so proactively and comprehensively before, as I say, FUD runs away with the story. So our cross-functional process aligns our value stream leads with the education and the growth teams to craft content that's easily digestible. We want to get everyone on the same page. So we create glossaries, FAQs, Eli 5 videos, and longer form articles. And so over the past quarter, we've been publishing such content for several of our campaigns, most notably the library revamp campaign that's been mentioned, SPV wallets launch, ARCs launch, and the stewardship value stream, which includes the network access rules, alert system, digital asset recovery. Also interesting for this campaign, we're going to be publishing on-camera interviews we did with the legal advisory team. So keep an eye out for that. I will also be sharing some links to this content here in the chat, but also on the Discord general thread. Because our aim, although our aim is to get information to you before the FUD muddies the water, it doesn't always happen that way. Easier said than done, right? And so I want to ask for your help. We send out this weekly newsletter. And if you sign up for that, you can make sure to get the facts straight from the horse's mouth. So all you got to do is head over to our bsvblockchain.org site, add a /newsletter to the end of the URL and sign up. That way, you'll get the content that we put our hearts and souls in to create with you in mind the moment it goes live. So yeah, that's it. Thank you so much. And a reminder to watch the the chat section and the Discord channel for links to the content that you might have missed if you had not been subscribed to that newsletter until now.
Thank you so much, Liz. And we've reached the end of our presentation portion. I want to really quickly just point out a couple upcoming events, including an event later today. So look for an upcoming tech talk led by Xiaowei Liu to help further advance the education around script, the utility, the flexibility and functionality of script. That will be a session where Xiaowei Liu will be presenting with Carlos Cruz. And really excited to check that out. That will be on his socials, his Twitter page. And then we have a upcoming webinar for ARC. Look forward to that one later this month as well. Finally, we have an exciting TypeScript library code along session, which we are hosting with Babbage. And that will be the platforms to be determined, but of course the information will be available in the Discord. These are efforts that we're really trying to take to ensure that this is an ongoing conversation. We've just spent the last 75 minutes presenting to you the good work that we're doing. And but this is not a one-way street. This is a two-way street. And having this feedback for you, especially at this pivotal moment of the network, I like to think that, in the chrysalis moment where it's not yet a caterpillar, it's not yet the butterfly. This is where the opportunity to provide your input. That's why we're so thankful to have David Case here presenting on his topic of the utility of BSV 21 tokens and ordinals and the functionality and the flexibility to be able to put entire websites onto these tokens and all of that this represents for the future of IoT and an open digital global economy with micropayments enabled. Your feedback at this moment to ensure that these tools are developing and being built in such a way as it supports your ability to demonstrate this product is so vital and so important. So I want to thank everyone for this session. Next session, we are at the question and answer period. So I would like to allow anyone to jump up and ask a question. And if you would like to ask a question, you are free to just unmute yourself and ask away. Maybe if I could break the ice, I'll ask a question. So we have David Case that presented with us. So my question to you, David, is, you talked about the ability to use these ordinals as pointers for more information, and that information could be a website itself. Can you talk a little bit more about that concept and help me understand the ability to inscribe an entire website onto a token, and what does that mean in terms of authenticating to a website? Typically, I'll authenticate with a password or something like this. Does this change the way, dynamically, the way that I would be able to authenticate to the network?
I guess nothing I've worked through at this point goes that to that level, in that this isn't really about kind of interacting with the web necessarily, although there certainly could be ways that could be worked in. It's really more about and essentially inscription gets pointed to by a transaction ID and an out point. And so you do gain security in that the identifier you're actually requesting is a hash of the data you're getting back. And so there is security in that when you get the file back, or when you get the essentially the transaction you're pointing to, like you can verify, you can hash it and figure out that it is the ID that you requested. And so you've got that kind of security. But essentially all it really means is any file that gets inscribed on chain has an identifier, has a pointer into the transaction that it's from. And so by simply requesting that transaction and parsing that transaction, you can validate that it is what it said it is.
Okay, and then one follow-up question on this is, we're used to, familiar with the concept of a phishing attack or something like this, where we would be trying to put the address of the place that we're attempting to visit into a plain English. And oftentimes when it's plain English, we can confuse a observer by just changing a I and making it look like an L or something like this. So is there a room for maybe not just the ability to sort of eliminate this concept of phishing attacks, because now if the website isn't being reached by some sort of plain English version of the content, but is actually a token itself, of course you eliminate some of that need, because now you're not necessarily disguising the content, since the address of the content itself is the token. And would you mind maybe letting me know if IPv6 and the increased address space that is available within an IPv6 framework would maybe potentially change some of the way in which that token could live at a permanent address?
This isn't really so much about where it lives at an address. It's more about having an identifier that any overlay network you're in that maintains essentially a cache of this data, or any peer-to-peer networks where people can provide the transactions to prove out what things are. Like, it isn't really, nothing actually changes at the network level. And in fact, this doesn't actually need the internet at all. It just needs some mechanism that says, I'm pointing at this, essentially this transaction ID, and anyone who can provide that transaction ID can fulfill that request. And again, what's there at this point is not some fully built out, here's a solution. It's most everything I presented are bits and pieces that are proof of concept or can be used together as part of a larger solution. And that's not really the area where, there's no bring anything to market as much as there is throw stuff out there and show what you can do and play with it at this point.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Anyone else that has any questions, or otherwise I may call on someone because I have another question. If it would be okay, if Jordan Kramsky, I see that you're in the chat with us. If you are available, I could ask you a question, because Jordan, coming to us from AWS, have two questions with respect to AWS. My question is about, can you walk me through some of the way in which AWS is exploring the fertile ground that of this technological revolution, this emergent technological development, and what are some of the key things that AWS is paying attention to with respect to this, specifically in terms of potential new business models that they could support and offer through their own offerings to their customers? That's one question. And then my second question is just, how can communities, projects, businesses within the BSV ecosystem leverage some of the tools that AWS offers when they're looking to scope out and build out Web3 solutions for their customers?
Yeah, so on the first part of it, it's funny because I was actually thinking a question to ask as well. But a lot of focus lately has been on considerations around things like secure key management. So there's been a lot of work done on things like we have a private compute offering called Nitro Enclaves, and there's recently been a number of articles and blogs that have been kind of moving things in that direction, as well as an emphasis on our node runner repository. So we have a repository of different chain solutions have sort of ready to go TypeScript solutions that can be deployed. So I think part of the focus right now is really helping customers who are building on AWS to get sort of bootstrapped much faster and have to be able to sort of contend to some of the key management and custodial considerations. Aside from that, there's a lot of, sort of the perpetual considerations around analytics and supply chain sort of offerings and things like that. So, since AWS sort of speaks to a number of different verticals, it's touching in a lot of places. Most of the stuff still is kind of what you see on the DeFi space, is really where you see a lot of the emphasis and conversation currently. And that's actually part of why I was curious if a number of the proof of concepts that are currently that were discussed today are available or things that can be shared and disseminated, because I definitely have a number of places that I would like to share those. So maybe that's something that I can circle back with and get some information on that to be able to sort of promote. To your second question, which was regarding people who are looking to build on AWS, I think there's already been a lot of work. I know like Darren and the team have been building implementations to quickly deploy, for example, the SPV wallet. And that's certainly something that's really going to help bootstrap things. We do have a lot of startup programs. So companies that are looking to get started building on AWS, there are credit programs and things like that that we can also help with to sort of lower that barrier to entry. And with that, you also get sort of a dedicated account team who can help you make architecture decisions or payment decisions or things like that. And then beyond that, I mean, it's really a consideration of kind of leveraging the services that AW offers, like key management and database services and those sort of things, which is really where I'm interested in playing with things like the SPV wallet and seeing how it looks leveraging sort of a database that's not running within the cluster, right? Running on AWS's database solutions or caching solutions or things like that to really expand it out and sort of speak a little bit more to availability and stability and security and that sort of thing. So I think that addresses both, but hopefully if you have any other questions, happy to address them.
Yeah, one follow-up question is just for an example of a business model that is, thriving within BSV, such as maybe Jungle Bus or something like this. Jungle Bus has a, a business model where, they will be working out terms and services with their customers who are looking for specific data, indexed by Jungle Bus itself. And then, of course, you would negotiate an agreement directly with Jungle Bus, but I guess I was getting at, what is the potential for, a product like Jungle Bus to be offered through something like an AWS marketplace or something like that, where, it's still a consumption model, but billing is coming through AWS and it's just, using the marketplace stage, but the negotiation is still being arranged from the end customer to the service provider, this time being Gorilla Pool, but that and what are the opportunities that AWS has to offer that currently for existing BSV products?
Yeah, so we do, you mentioned the marketplace, and we do have a specific facet of the marketplace called data exchange, which speaks exactly sort of to what you're saying. So if Jungle Bus were to provide index data and somebody wanted to subscribe to it via the AWS marketplace data exchange, they would then be able to interact with Jungle Bus's data set that's provided and then have that bill sort of go through their AWS bill, where they can also get additional savings and other sort of things via agreements. So that sort of like normalizes and centralizes billing considerations. And then Jungle Bus would have sort of an arrangement with AWS as that sort of intermediary to make those connections. And then independent of that, there's also we have offerings like Glue data connectors. So Glue is a service that's used for serverless ETL, which is used for sort of data manipulation, extraction, transform, load is the ETL component. And data connectors there could also connect into service providers like Jungle Bus or potentially overlay services or something like that as a means to sort of extend that and have a direct connection into a data source. So there are offerings and sort of mechanisms in place for data providers to sort of publish that information either via a private agreement to users or publicly that could certainly be established.
Wonderful.
Just to add on the SPV front, something I glossed over in my part of the presentation is running SPV wallet within AWS systems. The average monthly cost is something like $185 per month, which is very cheap if you compare that to running a full node system or something like that. So I just wanted to briefly mention that I've personally been spinning that up, and a couple of the developers working on it been spinning up their own instances, and it's a really good way to minimize cost for your business, or at least align cost to the actual business use case.
Yeah, and again, to that point, because SPV has the ability to interact with, a relational database or a caching solution, if you're already running on AWS and you have a database that's already up and operational, the ability to point your resources over to those AWS services that you're already using makes a lot of sense as far as the ability to sort of connect and interoperate with things. And this goes as far as things like our secrets manager, right? So putting your XPub or XPriv keys in secrets manager and sort of securing them that way are other options as well. So.
Yeah, and I want to just take a moment to highlight that it's not just a product that's as mature as Jungle Bus or a business that's as mature as Gorilla Pool that would be a suitable option to have these conversations with AWS. That really again, I encourage people to connect through the Discord, reach out to us. If you're still in an idea stage, there's always opportunity, and there's always value that we can get by strategizing how best we can make this offering available to the public, of just interfacing with a global digital ledger and a truth machine. Were there any other questions for any of our presenters? Again, I want to remind everyone that we do have a technical session coming up later today. I believe it is in a half hour and 1 hour. That'll be over at Xiaowei Lu's Scrypt Twitter space. That'll be with Carlos Cruz, Dr. Carlos Cruz, I believe. And I encourage you to join us there. Continue the conversation. We're hosting a lot more educational content sessions, even beginning with ELI 5 content, because the value proposition is now very clear to everyone. We're speaking with legislators. We're speaking with business providers. Some of the things that I really want to highlight that are these necessary steps, things like what are being developed with the standards of these libraries, the TypeScript, the most recent one, the Go libraries that are coming along next. These are little pieces that will help to solve the next hurdles that will be faced as we're starting to bring some of these deployments that make use of the ability to have a cost savings like SPV running through AWS available to you. And those as we begin to solve those hurdles within the to onboard more traditional developers into this space so that they can take advantage of these tools, we will begin to see the innovation and the creativity, the human ingenuity take over. And that is the purpose, as Jake Jones was saying, of a system that is built on a infrastructure that can support scalable micropayments. Unless there's any other questions, I want to thank everyone for presenting today. Look forward to the next town hall. Again, this is the last Thursday of the quarter. So it would be, I believe, sometime in July and in June. And I want to invite you all to the London Blockchain Conference as well. So we'll be there. I believe it is the 21st to the 23rd of May, and we will have a special developer-focused day led by the BSV Association in advance of that conference. So look for all that information through the Discord. I want to thank all of our presenters. And I want to thank you for being a loyal listener, a loyal viewer, someone who is going above and beyond to self-educate, to learn this amazing material in order to bring this transformation of technology to the world in a way that actually advances human liberty by being built on a bedrock and a foundation of existing laws. Thank you very much for your attendance. My name is Brett Banfi, Manifestable. I'm your host, and I am signing off. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.